Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. Gold is physical, Bitcoin is digital. Now the next asset class might be compute. At the frontier of AI infrastructure, one founder is turning raw GPU power into something investors can own, trade, and scale. From early banking and fintech roles to building a platform that connects institutional capital to real-time compute markets, Nikolay Filichkin is quietly opening the door to an entirely new investment class. One measured in teraflops, not tickers. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Rocco. That was a really lovely way of introducing our business. I really appreciate that. Yeah, good to be here, man.
And you are the CEO of Compute Labs, new company?
I am the CEO, Chief Business Officer. So I focus on like Web2 business. It is a new startup. We've been around for just a year.
That's not in startup terms, that's still a baby. You're still a newborn.
We are a newborn. We're barely walking.
So when most people think of GPUs, I think of like a cost center or like a tech spec or something that I need in my laptop. And I don't think of it as an asset class. So what flipped the switch for you to say, hey, something like GPUs, computations, how can I invest in this thing?
I'm so glad you asked because that's exactly the type of problem we're trying to solve. And it's the right question because there has not been enough education in the space to begin with. But to answer your question directly, why invest in GPUs? Well, let me ask you this. All of these AI growing businesses, this AI boom that we're all experiencing, we're hearing about, you're probably using ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT.
Yeah. I might be an avatar. You don't know. I might be AI.
My question to you, Rocco.
Yeah.
Is powering all of these new innovations? What is powering all of these new softwares? Like, what's the underlying product that is actually creating this emerging next wave of technology?
Yeah, I don't know. Chips?
It's chips. You're right. Yeah. GPU, chips, cards, whatever you want to call it. It's hardware. It's infrastructure that is super powerful, and it's quite hard to get into. And there's a lot of us out there who are hearing about this new wave of industry, revolution, technology. We hear that AI is growing, but we don't know how to invest into it. Maybe we can invest into Nvidia stocks, but maybe that's overvalued. Maybe we can invest into some of the AI companies if we can get our hands on it. But that's just like investing into a business that can go up or down based on whatever.
But that's like a stock. That's traditionally, I see what you're getting at. It's a stock. It's not a thing per se.
That's right. You're investing into equity into a business, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But me as like a fundamentals kind of person, I like to think about like how do we get into the core asset that actually powers everything, and then secondly, what is the underlying commodity that is actually growing this business? And for us, we believe that the commodity or the underlying asset for this emerging AI industry is the compute asset. So that's why we decided like, hey, when semiconductors were this growing emerging business, what was the underlying asset for semiconductors? That was the silicon, the raw asset. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to get into that, and that wave might be kind of getting older. So what's the next wave? Well, we think GPUs and GPUs as the underlying asset for AI. So that's why we're trying to enable this ability for all investors to get into the growth of this AI industry by just investing into the raw asset that powers it.
Okay, cool. So that's sort of the thesis behind Compute Labs. But what does that look like in practice? So how do you guys do that? Do you just go out and buy chips? I don't know. That sounds stupid, but it might be. But what is like the actual practical nature behind it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I appreciate that. So First off, that what you just explained is not stupid. It's not stupid. Actually, there are a ton of operators and data centers that do it just that way, and that's a fine way of doing it.
Yeah.
What's so interesting is that there is so much market demand that you really could just buy up a whole bunch of GPUs, put it up on a server, and you'll find customers. There's enough demand out there. However, the way we go about it is a little bit different. You can
Mhm.
think of us as kind of like maybe a Kickstarter, maybe a Yield Street, maybe a Republic. But effectively, we speak to data centers, or we call them
Mhm.
operators, these types of businesses that know how to actually use and operate on GPUs. We speak to them and we go and tell them, hey, we will help you raise 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, $10 million, whatever they need to build their server cluster. We will go out and put it on a private placement, meaning that we will put together the marketing material, we will put the financial modeling together, and then we go and look for investors that will actually want to buy into that GPU cluster. Each deal is different. So some server clusters, because of their region, higher in energy cost, lower energy cost, they might offer like a 20% IRR. Some might offer a 40% IRR if it's like a really good deal.
Mhm.
And then others will offer like a reasonable 10% IRR. And our job is just to make sure that operators or data centers have the capital they need in order to scale their businesses and serve their customers. But on the other side, our job is to make sure that investors have a product that is giving them a reasonable return on investment.
So, how many clusters are there approximately in the continental US?
As a whole,
Yeah, as a whole. Well, what is it? I'm just trying to get a sense of how big is this business.
yeah, I mean, that's I don't have the data with
Okay.
me. However, the last data input that I've seen was that I believe the GPU business is growing like a $400 billion industry as of 2026 or something like that. It's a massive industry that is only exponentially getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, because Bitcoin mining operators are also shutting down and getting into that business, isn't that? That's what I read at
That's
least.
it's a really interesting anecdote. Yes, significant amount of Bitcoin miners are transitioning from a Bitcoin mining business
Mhm.
onto hyperscaling AI infrastructure. That is correct.
Okay. So business is only going right and up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
basic.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
There are so many players emerging out of this AI infrastructure
Okay.
space. It's immense. And what's fascinating is like, yeah, in some cases, like prices are getting tighter, the market is getting tighter with
Mm.
like serving GPUs at an hourly rate. But what's interesting is that utilization is just keeping steady and going up.
These clusters, right? How do they make money? Again, maybe a stupid question, but like, who are their key customers? How do they actually generate revenue?
Yeah. So when we're speaking from an operator level or a data
Mm,
center,
mm,
uh, there are many ways of receiving revenue or getting revenue. And one is, of course, you can speak directly to an AI customer, meaning
yeah.
a business that's launching a new model or serving a new AI project. There are hundreds and thousands of these types of companies that you can do direct contracts with.
Mm-hmm.
You can consider that direct to consumer, really.
Mm,
And then another way, which is working with marketplaces or working with channel partners. So, for example, there's a ton of marketplaces in Web3. Of course, we know there's Aether, IONET, Akash. There's a whole ton of them. And then there's similar companies in Web2 like RunPod.
mm.
And then there's going to be some infrastructure supply channels, kind of like um, man, I forget the name of one. But the point is that there's a lot of software layers that
Mhm.
are helping bring AI companies to these data centers and securing demand.
Cool. Cool. So, what is the difference between sort of buying a Compute Labs backed GPU asset, like you just explained, and something like maybe investing in a cloud provider or data center, right? Something like that.
Yeah, another great question, Rocco. So you can certainly invest into AI companies and data centers directly, and you can speak to a data center and see if they're taking investments.
Yeah.
The way we do it at Compute Labs is that when you are an investor and you are investing into compute infrastructure, you're investing exclusively into the compute asset.
Mm,
And that means that you own the asset as the investor. You will not have equity into the data center. You will not have equity into future cash flows as the data center or anything like that. Rather, it's just that specific compute cluster that you allocated capital to. So it could be hypothetically, a 12 node or 12 server cluster compute asset of H200s. And it's just that one. It won't be the B200. It won't be the 5090s. It won't be something else.
okay, interesting. I read somewhere that you are part of Nvidia's Inception. It's called VC Alliance. Well, talk to me about that. What's that all about?
Sure. The NVIDIA VC Alliance is a program that NVIDIA has spun out to promote and help startups who are going
Mm-hmm.
to be NVIDIA hardware and software.
Okay.
It's really a way for NVIDIA to give a thumbs up on some curated companies and to say like, hey, this is a cool company, and to also offer them preferred pricing on some limited hardware, some specific relationships, things like that. NVIDIA is doing everything they can to support any
Mm.
business that is going to be using their infrastructure.
And do you see any chip maker sort of competing with Nvidia, or is it basically a question of they've got a moat, no one can basically touch them? Because I mean, Intel and AMD and these guys, they've been pretty quiet, or dare I say, non-existent.
It's another good question. So if we're talking about hyperscaling and
Mm,
the uh, GPU heavy workloads, well, yes, NVIDIA is currently and clearly the market leader.
yeah.
Uh, and if we're looking at specific like consumer usage, I think that it's a pretty fair game between AMD and NVIDIA. However, for like actual data center purposes,
Mm,
NVIDIA is the winner, and it will continue to be the winner for quite some time. However, I do see a lot of emerging players trying to squeeze more usage out of AMD hardware. And I also see
uh,
designers, like there's a designer out there called Tensorend. I believe they're from Slovakia.
mhm.
Uh, and they are a new emerging player. They've gotten a healthy amount of interest from investors and consumers everywhere. And they're not ready to compete with NVIDIA, but they're getting there. They're growing.
That's
So
so cool.
in my mind, it's not if, it's just when.
To Wayne. Okay, cool. Let's talk a bit into the future, maybe 1 or 2 years. You talked about creating financial products around compute labs. What would a hypothetical, like a compute ETF, maybe look, or some derivative products, trading, data center clusters, liquidity, something like that? Have you thought about that?
Yes, of course. And it's very much a core part of our ethos and why we built Compute Labs. Because when we think about investments or commodities that are just
Mm,
like sitting there somewhere, like
uh-huh.
for example, GPUs are just sitting in a data center. Um, it's really hard to invest in, it's really hard to buy. So the reason why what we do is we tokenize the ownership of these assets is so
Mm,
that
collateral.
when you are a trader or an investor, you then have the ability to, well, one, you have immediate more liquidity,
Hmm.
but then you have the ability to trade your position. You can also collateralize in it. You can do maybe like spot market and all types of derivatives. When we're talking about ETFs, yes, in our roadmap, we do foresee that we would like to have the ability to invest in not just one compute cluster, but maybe a basket of them. Invest into 5 compute clusters and then get the yield of them collectively, and then there we go. Um, Eventually, perhaps we put this on an actual ETF market and a Web2 market. But right now we're still early, and so
Yeah.
we're currently doing it deal by deal.
Yeah, sort of like the Nasdaq where you would have a basket of goods instead one you just have, that could be very interesting. Right. So finally, from my side, last question before I let you leave. In 5 years, what does sort of the GPU market look like if you guys succeed?
That is a really good question. In 5 years, I
It's a
anticipate
long
compute lab.
time. It's a
Yes,
long
it is,
time.
especially in the AI
Now
world.
it's and this is big picture long, and it might not happen, but let's go with it.
Sure. So what I can say for sure that in 5 years, Compute Labs will have a heavy ownership of GPUs on our balance sheet. And that means a heavy amount of capital
I can
dedicated just to compute and a heavy amount of investors that will be serving with compute. Hypothetically, maybe we'll be like the BlackRock of GPUs, but that is a long shot. What I see more likely is that the GPU space will be growing exponentially up until the 5 year point. After 5 years, I don't know at what rate. Perhaps we'll have AGI, and maybe AGI will require even more compute resources. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. But I know for Compute Labs is that at 5 years, we'll be extremely mature in our compute business. And at this point, we'll continue to offer additional products, not just compute, but maybe nuclear, maybe solar, maybe a new type of fixed asset that isn't very liquid. That's our next step as a business.
I wanted to say because something needs to power these data centers.
Right.
And
And as long
and
as, yes, to your point, yes.
and you said
As long as there is a need for compute and compute adjacent products, we'll be building that pipeline, making sure that we can turn all of these heavy infrastructure into liquid assets.
love it. Nikolay, thank you so much for joining me. If the listeners want to go and connect with you and Compute Labs, where can they do that?
Yeah. X, LinkedIn, our website is a good spot. We do love our website. We spend a lot of time on it. Any place really.
We'll put all the links in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Show me how you move. Don't got nothing to prove.